So I've been reading on Twitter recently about the Hollywood Your Name adaptation directed by J.J. Abrams, and it appears that a lot of people are not too hopeful that this film is going to be good. And given Hollywood's track record with anime adapted films, there's been Edge of Tomorrow, which has been good, but a lot of the films that they adapt end up not being that great. And so that was kind of what I was expecting when I was reading these Twitter comments. However, a lot of people making these comments, or a lot of comments that I saw, were not so much about Hollywood's ability to adapt the core of the film or what the film sort of meant initially, but they were talking about how they couldn't adapt the culture of the film. And this is odd to me because culture in Your Name, like the Shinto culture, it wasn't ever a big part of the film. And, it makes me think that people were missing the point, or the whole point of what the film was about. And some of you may be wondering, like, what about Shinoha? She was a Shinto priestess, and you're right, she was. But that didn't play any part into, like, her character, like, the character of, like, a human being you'd meet on the street, A person's occupation doesn't affect their character. Yes, she was a priestess, but that was irrelevant to the way she behaved in situations and stuff like that. Your occupation has no bearing on your character as an individual. So she doesn't have to be a Shinto priestess. And another thing that other people are saying is the Kuchikamizake. But that also wasn't all that important. All that was used for was it was a plot device that allowed characters to travel through time. But aside from that, it didn't do anything else. It was just a justification for what was going on. So you can replace that with something else, and it still works. You don't lose anything by taking it out, so long as you replace it with something that is just as believable, or even more so believable. And also, you have the red thread of fate, which is also just a plot device used to connect the characters through some universal force. You can replace that as well. That's all it is. It has no cultural significance in the film itself. All it is a device used to connect the two characters. So it's replaceable. You can change it. And so a lot of people are missing the point of the film because it was never about these cultural aspects of Shinto or Japanese culture or whatnot. I mean, you have some of the jokes which play on the culture, but you can change jokes here and there. You can change out comedy here and there. And the comedy is more so based on the setting. So if you change the setting, you can change the comedy, and none of it matters. But the point of Your Name was about two people coming to know each other, coming to understand each other, and eventually falling in love with one another without ever having met face to face. They were living each other's lives without ever actually truly sort of quote-unquote knowing the person. They'd never seen each other. They'd never known who the actual person was, and they never really had any evidence that they existed beyond that faith that the other person did, because their life was acting sort of strange, and they realized that, hey, these dreams are kind of weird, and I'm in this other person's body. So they could have just been dreaming, but they had faith that it was another person. They had some evidence to base that on, of course, but through that connection with one another, or through being a part of one another's lives, they came to understand each other without knowing the other person. And this is the core theme of Your Name. It's people understanding one another, coming to know each other without ever meeting each other. And I think this is what Shinkai was going for, and it's great, especially because of the time we live in now with the proliferation and ubiquity of the internet. So that is, that is the core part of Your Name. So if you keep that in the film, a lot of it will work, provided the characters are where they should be, and that would be one character being sort of a lot of the comedy and stuff like that, or a lot of the sort of we can't be together type stuff is from them being separated by both time and space. There's culture shock as well, from country to city. And so long as you keep those elements, you can change a lot about the film, and it still has a very similar, very powerful message about sort of people falling in love without meeting each other. And I think this is what a lot of people are missing. They look at Ghost in the Shell and they think, that didn't do well because of the cultural stuff. And no, that's not why Ghost in the Shell failed. The reason why Ghost in the Shell failed is because they changed the core of the story. What they did was they kept the skin. They kept the sort of futuristic Neo-Tokyo look, feel, the major. They kept what she looked like. She kept the characters the way they looked like, or how they sort of behaved, but they changed what the story was about. They made it a revenge story, which was not what Ghost in the Shell was about. And so that is why that failed. It was a poorly written revenge story. It was drawing on a crowd of people that were in Ghost in the Shell for sort of the philosophical concepts of what it means for something to be alive. If a machine has its own thoughts, its ideas, is it alive? And all the sort of repercussions and consequences of those thoughts. That was what the original Ghost in the Shell was about. It was never about revenge. And so that's why that film failed. And it's that just it makes it baffles me why people are still worried about it's going to fail because of the culture, and that's not true. You can set Your Name anywhere. You can set it in the United States. You can set it in Mexico. You can set it in Europe. You can set it in Africa. You can set it in India. And so long as you keep that core idea of the film together, you can really play with a lot of the aspects. You can even make it a guy-guy relationship or a girl-girl relationship, and it would be you're dancing with more elements to it, because it's not just separated by distance, but you're also having to deal with homophobia of the world and stuff like that. But it still works. It's the same film set in a different place, playing with slightly new or different ideas, but the core would be the same. You're still dealing with people falling in love with one another, understanding one another without meeting each other face to face, and that's what the film is about. That's the whole purpose for its existence, is that this can happen, and the cultural things were used as plot devices instead of actually being part of the narrative. Kuchi Kamizake, we can time travel because of it. Red Thread of Fate, that's why the characters are connected. And so that's it doesn't, just because you can't translate culture doesn't mean you can't translate a film. Just because it's an adaptation and you're changing things, as a matter of fact, adaptations should change things. You can't change the core of the story. That's why Ghost in the Shell failed, as I've said. But these are things that you can change. And these are how adaptations can work. Now, I can understand people being worried about, Hollywood adapting it correctly, which, is a fair argument. Just, it's not because of the culture of Your Name. It would be because they fail to get the point of the film, which, based on what I've been seeing on Twitter, is fairly common with a lot of people. So, it's not out yet. We don't know if it's going to be good or not. I'm personally a little pessimistic because of, Hollywood's track record and all that. Just keep in mind that the reason that the film isn't going to be good, if it isn't good, is not because of the cultural aspects that they didn't translate, or because it's not set in Japan. The reason that it will fail is because it fails to get the point of what the original was about, and they try and do something that is not along those lines. And that is how it will fail as an adaptation. But yeah, that's what I'm here to talk about. It was just baffling to me, and I see this a lot, where people complain about, you know, you change the culture, therefore it's bad, or whitewashing, therefore it's bad, which, you know, whitewashing has its own issues and stuff with people getting angry about, but, you know, if you keep the core of the film, you know, there are a lot of places you can set it. You can set it in India, you can set it in Africa, as I've said. And, you know, if you set it in India or Africa, you probably shouldn't use, like, white European actors, just because, you know, your setting is way off from, you know, those are not common for the area. You know, if you're setting it in India, generally a good idea to use Indian actors. If you're setting it in Africa, generally a good idea to use African actors. But, you know, it's your character should be based on where the story is set, not some sort of idea of social justice. Now with the United States, of course, you can play around with things because the United States is fairly diverse. So you can kind of do what you want there. You can have, you know, actors of whatever playing whatever part, you know, because the United States is as diverse as it is. But, you know, people miss the point of what makes a film good, and it's not because of the skin color of an actor, it's not because of cultural significance, it's because of the themes and the, like, actual characters, the characters' psyches that bounce off one another, the personalities of the characters, and those narrative thematic elements and those motifs that you see. Not because of the plot devices, not because not because of things that are not directly related to the characters themselves or the narrative. So that's really all I'm here to talk about is, you know, people are saying Your Name is going to be wrong, or the live action Hollywood Your Name is going to be wrong, and for the wrong reasons, because they missed the point of what the film was about. But yeah, that'll be it for this video. This is a lot different than videos I normally make. I normally am just a manga review, haul, first impressions, whatever list channel. But this was something I wanted to talk about. So hopefully it turned out alright. Hopefully you learned something or enjoyed the video. Or maybe this is going to get a lot of negative response, which, you know, makes sense because I'm picking a fairly unpopular side of the argument. But, you know, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Maybe you think I'm crazy, don't know what I'm talking about, but, you know, that's different people's opinions. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you want to see manga, anime stuff in the future, or, well, manga stuff is on my channel now. Anime stuff will be coming at some point because I want to do it, but I need to actually make those videos. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. You know, hopefully I'll see you around. See ya.